Hello team and welcome to another ATP Geopolitics video with myself, Jonathan MS Pitts. This is Ukraine War Frontline update. Very late one, really is too late for me, for the 23rd of January 2024. Many of you on the other side of the world will know that it's 24th of January 2024 right now. Right, okay. If you don't know what the lines on my map mean, please check out the key to the map on the screen at the moment. Let's go to the northeastern sector. There's a few bits and pieces to say about various places on the front line today, actually. As you can see, Andrew Perpetua, I'd say this is probably catching up more than signifying an offensive by the Russians today. This is going more in line with what DSM and Surat maps had. So this is the Avdiivka area where the Russians have been seen to attack just north of Berestova over the last few days, taking Krokmalna a couple of days ago. So that is, I think, an alignment of the mappers there. I'm not looking at ISW today because it'll be a full day out of date. They've probably just brought their new report out, to be quite honest. But anyway, just sort of going through this fairly quickly. So the northeastern sector, no changes, I would say, even though those pins are there, no changes today. Coming on to Bilahorivka area, there's quite a bit of activity taking place there at the moment, but no changes to the mapping, calm down compared to what has been happening there. What else to say? There's no changes to the mapping in Bakhmut. So there's been quite a lot of activity north around Vasile, and I think Andrew Perpetua's live stream last night was talking about this area, about the need for this to be an area where mortars are used by both sides, both to defend and attack, due to the topography, and saying that a few things about that place. I think there could be a bit of a fight on the hands at some point in the near future there. So watch out for activity in that area. But actually, as we come down, even though there's no changes to the mapping, a few things just coming out with regard to the trench network just north of Klishchivka here. So we have this area to the northwest, really, of Klishchivka that is on the higher ground, if you remember. Let's just remind you of the topography. So Klishchivka sits in a sort of the low land there, not quite a dell, but you've got the higher ground up here that looks down upon Klishchivka. It's now completely obliterated as a town, and then on this high ground you have a trench network, basically this red area that you can see all those zigzags of the trenches. There's an extensive trench network there, that Surat maps claimed the Russians took control of some time ago. Really, none of the other mappers agreed with that. Well, the first thing to claim came from Global War Monitor, saying in the area of Klishchivka, Russians have added onto their advance from yesterday. So talking about some advances just kind of north maybe of that trench area. So this is a trench area there. It doesn't have that under Russian control, but saying that actually this area over here, controlled possibly by the Russians, probably talking about this, where they advanced into this sort of woodland there. That's not agreed. I mean, Andrew Perpetua has not changed that mapping, so I'd be somewhat dubious about that. So quite often, like we've just seen up in the Avdiivka area, Krokmalna, Surat maps was quick onto that. Andrew Perpetua, more conservative, and different timing of the maps as well. So, it's not that everyone's mapping all the time. So Andrew then followed along, confirmed that movement. This has now been beyond that confirmation, and it looks like it could be one of those over confident bits of mapping. Maybe not. You might say that about this area as well. So getting back to this trench line, I was dubious that the Russians controlled that, because really, if you control that, you control Klishchivka. Well, if they don't have all of this under their control, then it's unlikely they've got this trench network here that sits on that high ground. So I think it probably is contested. Well, Getty has just released this, which is Klishchivka Bakhmut direction. The Ukrainian force had a little advance, but quite important successes. The Russian soldiers were pushed back from landing at a height of 215.7 meters. So this is the high point around here. This grey zone, as you can see, Getty is saying that, yep, the Russians control some part of that trench network towards the east, but the rest of it appears to be grey zone. Well, half of it then grey zone, and then maybe a quarter of it Ukrainian controlled. And actually, they've pushed the Russians back in there. I would imagine that's going to be pretty tough fighting. So that's to suggest that this area is now under the Ukrainian control. All of this area, according to that map, are under Ukrainian control. This area here, sort of more grey zone, and then over here under Russian control. So anyway, point being that there is activity taking place there, tough fighting, I would imagine, with the Ukrainians having a little bit of success, showing that the Surat map's understanding of what's going on there might be a little bit off. Okay, then coming down to Avdiivka, where there's quite a bit to say. So first of all, some success for the Ukrainians up in the just northwest of Stepova. There's some footage that came out today actually of another Bradley basically having a go at a tree line in that Stepova area. The Bradleys seem to be fairly busy around there at the moment. So I've just found that it's in a tree line, outskirts of Avdiivka. I would imagine that is probably the Stepova area, but I can't definitely confirm that. But it's using its good old 25mm chain gun to give a right old raking to targets within that tree line. Yeah, they seem to be fairly effective there, doing a good job of taking out equipment and positions and being quite active in these tree lines around Stepova and along the settlement itself. But anyway, some gains, as according to Surat maps, in that northern area to stop the Russians continuing along towards Bakhmutivka and Ocheretny. Here we have, no we don't, to the wrong place. Here we have Surat maps saying that the situation north of Avdiivka, Ukrainian army launched a counterattack and recaptured a series of positions northwest of Stepova and adjacent to the railway. So yeah, good news for the Ukrainians there. Somewhat more challenging down in the south here. So first of all, Surat maps has some gains along this area, past now the Tsarska Ochota restaurant area, right into the dachas and taking control of basically the whole of this southern patch of dachas there. Andrew Perpetua catching up a little bit, saying, yeah, okay, control of this area has been confirmed, and that's an improvement for the Russians. So it could well be that the Russians do indeed control what Surat map says here, but there's a little bit of a difference with regard to what's going on here. Now here is the Zenit, basically nuclear bunker that the Ukrainians have got. They've had control of that for a long time, and it's solid control. It's very difficult to take. We're going to dip into what Andrew Perpetua says about this, but there were rumors coming out about this yesterday, and as you can see, Surat maps has given all of that territory to the Russians. So that looks like a big old bit of territory taken in one day, and considering this is one of the most defended fortifications for the Ukrainians, that would be really big news. So actually, first of all, we go to a war map here that says Russia have advanced across the highway south of Avdiivka and entered the southern outskirts of the city. So that's what we've been looking at over the last couple of days. And then it says the Zenit defensive position is at risk of being cut off and may have already fallen. It has been a strong point for Ukraine since the pre-2022 front line. So, you know, that area there would be a significant loss for the Ukrainians. Now, Surat maps is just now, like an hour ago, less than, said the situation in the south of Avdiivka is contradictory, as Ukrainian troops have sent reinforcements and are launching counterattacks in the urban area captured by the Russians during the last 2 days. For the moment, it seems the Russian troops managed to hold the line. The same situation occurs in the east of the city, where the Russian army has launched new attack on the Ukrainian army trenches along the road south of Kamyanka, but for the moment, the Ukrainian troops are still present in the surrounding dachas, which is to say, first of all, that there could be some counterattacks in this area. Sometimes that's the language he uses to admit that he was a bit overconfident with the original claims. And other times it is genuine counterattacks. These are dynamic areas. The other areas talking about is it'll be somewhere around here, south of Kamyanka, where the Russians have had some success over the last week. And it's pretty challenging all around Avdiivka. Now, let's go back to this Zenit claim. So, Andrew Perpetua, first of all, before his live stream last night, said, okay, I'm less worried about Zenit now. So the claims are coming out. And then basically, he says there is a thing where if something is very bad and also plausible, it is much more worrying than being not very bad and plausible, or very bad and not plausible. The level of worry depends on context, and losing Zenit would be very bad. So seeing even weak evidence is much more emotional because consequences are so huge, even remaining skeptical. Although I think the weak evidence is debunked enough to feel better now, but the situation is still worrying. The situation is that the Russians are making gains to the north there, and that means that they can attack Zenit from the north. I know they can attack from the south as well, but you'll hear from Andrew that actually it's more plausible. Or it's not more plausible. It's an easier route to take from the north, and that is becoming more worrying for the Ukrainians with each day of advances in the area for the Russians.
It was part of the old Soviet airfield here. So this was the airfield, and this is Zenit. This was all one military installation. The airfield is obviously where they put their airplanes. Zenit was an air defense command, I believe. It is complete with a nuclear bunker and many other bunkers. So the primary bunker and the primary defense of this whole area is the in the north next to the road. So I think it's one of these two buildings or whatever. Anyway, so the bunker in the north is the primary bunker. Every other bunker is like a supplemental bunker. So there's a bunch of bunkers here, of various sorts. I think some of them were like ammo bunkers, and some of them were others like whatever. There's a whole load of bunkers here. They're all Soviet. I think they're built in the 60s and 70s or something. And yeah. Wait, I'll be right back. Okay. Can you do the
So it started with more or less rumors that the Russians took Zenit or parts of Zenit, and they were spread pretty far. At the same time, there wasn't much denying out of Ukrainian Telegram channels, so it was really hard to understand if it really happened or if it didn't happen. On top of that, there was then a geolocation provided by someone really bad at geolocating, to be honest. But it, like looking at it, it wasn't out of the possibilities really. And that geolocation showed Russian soldiers allegedly taking Ukrainian POWs. Now the geolocation, just to say that ahead of things, was wrong. Later there was a new video of the same situation where you could see that, or you could see more of a building in the background, and that more that you could see was able to definitely prove that the geolocation was wrong. Nevertheless, a lot of Telegram channels, including Ukrainian ones, took that geolocation as a given and were further spreading that Zenit was either taken or partially taken. Together with the overall situation in Avdiivka, considering that the Russians were able to penetrate the residential area to the north of Zenit, kind of made it something which was in the range of possibilities that it could have actually happened that Ukraine potentially abandoned Zenit. Oh yeah, Andrew's back. You can continue from there. Why was it a possibility that Ukraine could have abandoned Zenit?
Well, anyway, attacking Zenit from the south is basically impossible, especially the southeast. This is one of the densest minefields in all of Ukraine. Even attempting to attack through it is basically suicidal. Okay, so attacking from the west is slightly less stupid, but also basically impossible. The only way to get to it is from the north. This northern bunker is the primary defense point, and it's in the north. So what you would have to do to attack it is kind of come from the north somehow, probably from the northeast, because that's where the road is. You'd have to probably take the road, either the highway itself or go around it, and attack Zenit from the north. And in doing so, you would cut it off, because the only way to supply Zenit is from the north. So, yeah, this is the only realistic way to attack it. Now, what the Russians did is they broke through into this forest area. They spread out a bit. There was some talk that they were pushing down the highway to around here, and yeah, that's that what was so worrying. There is this residential area right here that, from what I understand, Russia has not even attempted to attack at all in any of this. So,
That one there.
and this residential area is obviously connected to Zenit. Like it doesn't take a genius to figure that out. So, this is kind of the backbone of the Ukrainian defense here. So, the reason why Zenit is so important is because this road here. Here, I'll go to the other view.
I'll show you on my map what he's talking about.
Oh boy.
There are these roads coming in, these farm roads down here coming in.
This road here, where am I? Yeah, this road here is like the only paved road into Avdiivka that is like usable. It's like the only paved usable road. And then there's these like kind of farm roads that go into Avdiivka through Sevierna. So there's these farm roads into so these two roads are like the two arteries that are powering this whole city at the moment. And Zenit is on high ground overlooking these like basically farm roads. So if you lose Zenit and also in the process you'd probably lose these residential area right here. But if you lose this area, it will sever really vitally important roads. Now these roads are already practically severed because they're under fire control. It's very dangerous to drive through them, but it is possible, especially this northern one. And you can see that there's like vehicle tracks here, and there's like these vehicle tracks. Like you can drive here. It's just very dangerous. And this more northern road is basically like it's kind of the only way to feed the central part of Avdiivka. And then there's an even more northern road up here that's I believe mostly farm roads and incredibly dangerous because you're getting very close to Stepova, etc. So this is why Zenit was so important, why it remains important, and its loss, like its attack was plausible in that Russia was moving in all of the directions that you'd need to move into to attack it.
So that situation, it looks like it's not been taken, but it is going to be pretty hairy there at the moment as the Russians are gaining to the north and are potentially able to come down. And Zenit is, the key to these roads that feed, these farm roads that feed into Avdiivka. Now, of course, obviously, the Russians are moving up here, then they can directly interdict those roads. This road is going to be, important for the Ukrainians to keep, and obviously the paved road as well. But as the Russians squeeze that cauldron, everywhere just becomes really difficult. So anyway, that's Zenit. Zenit. It may or may not have fallen, but it does seem like it probably hasn't, and that Surat Maps is probably being somewhat overconfident, a bit overzealous in going along with the rumors that have been spread on both sides of the aisle in terms of on Telegram channels, Ukrainian and Russian. What's going to be interesting is how they phrase walking it back. If they do walk it back, sometimes with stuff like this, he just leaves it until a couple of months later it changes, or in this case, if it is likely to fall, he'll probably leave it there until eventually it does fall, and then say, hey, told you so, type thing. So we'll see. Now, here we have further to the south, so coming out of Avdiivka and moving towards, we'll drop it into Novomerkalivka area, just south of there in Krasnohorivka. Yes. So we've got Novelska, Krasnohorivka, Mariinka. No, not Novomerkalivka. Sorry, what am I talking about? Just north of Mariinka. My apologies. And south of Krasnohorivka, we have another. This looks like the mine that was, or is the mine that was, I don't even remember, some months ago, it was attacked with columns of vehicles. Then there were claims that they took the mine, but then each side was kind of hitting it with FPV drones, and it looked like actually the Russians hadn't taken it. And there was that quite famous Telegram channels at Donbass. Oh, what was his name? Donbass something. Anyway, he was a drone pilot, a unit commander, and also a Telegram chappie. Anyway, he was taken out with cluster munitions. A whole bunch of them were walking a tree line around here, or possibly around here, and then were taken out by cluster munitions just after the Ukrainians got hold of cluster munitions. And it's been sort of a bit back and forth. Well, the Ukrainians now appear to have pushed the Russians back from there again. Here we have Global War Monitor saying Ukraine's 80th Air Assault Brigade has entered and liberated the outpost plant that is south of Krasnoyarivka, north of Mariinka. You would expect that to be followed up by Suriyat Map's tweet eventually. I mean, I think we're in a process of seeing him update his tweet, so there aren't, for all the gains or for either side on the front line, there isn't a Suriyat Maps tweet for each of them. But we can see that Andrew Perpetua has quite a large change there. So the Suriyat Maps change was this small triangle there, and Andrew Perpetua's pushed the Russian lines right back to here from where both mappers had them. So yeah, that's good news for the Ukrainians in that area. And then, Novomykhailivka, I don't know that anything untoward has happened around there. There's a lot of pressure on there, particularly, I think, from the south, because they really want to push towards Konstantinivka. Novomykhailivka is not your ultimate goal. It is kind of extrinsically useful for the Ukrainians to keep that. It's not that it has value in and of itself. Its value is in stopping the Russians getting to Konstantinivka. So the Ukrainians would like to fight to stay here. The Russians might try and push, not bother going through, and push either north and or south to try and hit Konstantinivka, take that out, and interdict that road that feeds down to Vuhledar, and will eventually allow them to take Vuhledar and indeed have this whole area that I think is pretty important, because it stops the Ukrainians being able to hit the outskirts of Mariupol with HIMARS. Anyway, that's what's going on there. No changes to the rest of the front line, so nothing really else to say other than we're going to pop into Krynky and a source just discussing there. So no changes, but pretty tough there. The other day, if you remember, we heard about Moses being taken out, a sort of the equivalent of Magyar for the Ukrainians. It was a Russian drone unit commander who was very highly regarded and was responsible for taking out vast number of Ukrainian targets, and particularly boats. Well, Romanov, the Russian military blogger, stated that after the liquidation of Russian FPV ace Moisey, or Moses, in Krynky, the disablement of its group as a result of a successful strike, Ukrainians resumed active rotation of forces into the settlement. So yeah, previously they were all being drowned by Moses. So the idea was the Ukrainians were really struggling to get across the river. That drone unit was just absolutely hammering them. And now it seems that things are looking on the up for the Ukrainians, and they are able to rotate, which means get their wounded soldiers out and replenish them. And that might give them a little bit of a boost in that area. And it just goes to show how important drone operators are, and particular units that are very good. You would imagine that if the Russians were able to take out Magyar and his unit, for example, it would be an absolute PR field day, but also useful for the Russians in taking out their expertise. So that's been a very useful strike on Moses for the Ukrainians. Right, that's the Frontline update for today. A very late one. Thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, and share. Take care, and I'll speak to you soon.